All right, Junkie Nation, he's back. Ken Flo in the house. He'll be calling PFL, as you know, for the next couple of weekends. Coming up here on the 18th, which is a Friday on ESPN. They follow it up on the 23rd. Again, another ESPN offering. These are the semifinals that eventually get you to the finals. Of course, we're also coming off a stellar week in San Antonio. Welcome back, Ken Flo, to Junkie Radio. How are you?
Thanks, boys. How are you guys?
Doing great. And before we look forward, I want to go back. Let's tie in the whole Peruvian thing here. Your
Yes.
parents are from Peru, our
Yes.
mom's from Peru. We've known that for years. And hey, you look at South America, Peru's a pretty good sized country. It's had a pretty decent football team, but I
Yes.
kept waiting. I kept waiting for some athletes to come from our sport, mixed
Yeah.
martial art. There's some tough dudes in Peru, man.
Yeah.
And boy, are they coming. And I'm telling you, that Pinedo guy, Jesus Pinedo, is as good as they come, man. That dude is a savage. What a huge win over Bubba Jenkins this past weekend.
I couldn't agree more, man. John Anik called me out today on the podcast for being biased towards Peruvian fighters, and I had to admit that yes, that is true. It's always exciting to see. Obviously the soccer team do well, but it's great to see other athletes come from Peru, whether it's like a world champion surfer or, see guys get on the scene, especially with MMA, which is our sport, right? So Jesus Pinedo, man, he is a problem. Like he is one of those hungry dudes that not only is trying to defeat you, he's trying to hurt you. He's trying to do bad things to you, man. So he's a savage, gets right in your face and makes you fight him. So really fun style to watch. And, I was talking to some other people about it, and it's like, how many upsets does someone need to get until you're like, okay, this isn't an upset anymore. This dude's a real fighter. And, going back to back, one against Brendan Loughnane, the other one against Bubba Jenkins. I mean, that's the way you put your name out to the MMA world. So he's looked phenomenal. It's exciting for Peru in general. And obviously for Pinedo, he's looking like a world beater, man. He has a very tough final against Braga, Gabriel Braga. But, it's good to be an MMA fan right now.
Yeah, and he even had some Diaz swag. Once he
He
got
did.
going, he was talking smack to Bubba Jenkins. I really liked that about him. Like the guy was just ticking boxes all the way around. By the way, man, he's a giant at that weight class.
Huge.
But he is a problem. And what I liked was because you always wonder in different parts of the world, what's this like? What's that like? So in
Yeah.
South America, obviously wrestling's a bit of a deficiency. For there's just not much wrestling going on in
Yeah.
all of South
Yeah.
America, including Brazil and everything. But I loved how he was working on underhooks. A lot of those taller athletes start throwing elbows. Next thing you know, they get taken down. And I'm like, no, first prevent it. He was able to get up. And you could tell every time he won one of those mini battles, he just grew even more in confidence because now it's back to slinging dogs. You know what I mean?
George, I
Have
think
you
you're
been able
spot
to
on.
talk to have you been able to either talk to him or his team and just to see what's been the evolvement of MMA in Peru?
Yeah, no, George, I think you're spot on, man. We haven't been able to talk so much about it. He was saying how, first of all, it's going to be, or he wants it to be a great honor to be the first world champion in mixed martial arts from Peru. And he said there's a lot of tough guys coming up. He said there's a lot of guys that came before him, a lot of great training partners that he has. But this is kind of his main motivation is to win a world championship for Peru. He's very proud as a Peruvian. And I think he could very well be on his way. Like I said, a very tough final for him. But, I mean, the previous two fights were very tough for him as well, taking out all those other guys. So I think that, it's almost like it compounds. Once you see someone find some success, it leads to more success in a lot of ways, especially we see it with gyms, right? Whether it's City Kickboxing, and obviously they are legitimately a great mixed martial arts team. But when you see someone else, either from your area, from your team, do well, it tends to give other fighters that much more confidence to know that, hey, we have the right recipe here. We are doing the right things. If Pinedo can do it, then maybe I can. And then someone else says that, and someone else says that. So I think that, a country like Peru, they do things with such passion, and there are people there that are literally hungry and trying to establish themselves not only as some of the best athletes in the world, but trying to make it out of poverty, trying to do something bigger and better than themselves, or what maybe or where they came from. So, to see Pinedo come from humble beginnings and potentially be a millionaire at the end of this year would be phenomenal for his team, for his country, and of course for himself.
Yeah, and we are going to talk about PFL 8 and 9. I'm sorry, but I'm just really so happy for this kid. Another thing that I loved hearing from him was the money was like one of the last things he was thinking about. He was thinking about the
Yes.
glory. Like he's already seen what it could do for himself, for Peruvian mixed martial arts, for his country. I thought that was top notch.
Absolutely. Because, I think money motivation can only take you so far. I think that it's a more powerful indicator or measurement when you're trying to do something for legacy. And because I think that's the thing, right? That's the thing. $1 million won't stick around forever. It actually can go pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But being a world champion, that's forever. And I think that's his main thing. And to hear him say that was the biggest thing. He's here for glory.
Mhm.
Was pretty damn cool. And I think his head is absolutely in the right spot. And so far, everything that he said he was going to do, he's gone out there and accomplished, and he continues to surprise everybody.
Yeah, very refreshing. I'll make sure to send these first 6 minutes of this interview to John Anik. Sorry, man. More Peru talk over here. It's not like he doesn't shove the Boston and the Chowderhead accent down our throats when he
That's
comes on
fair.
our show. So he's just going to have
That's
to take
fair.
a little bit of his medicine there. But of course, coming up is PFL 8, Renan Fajeda versus Maurice Green. I don't think you can find two bigger human beings colliding 6'7" and 6'8" in that main event. Talk about that one, man. Both guys have been through a lot in their careers, but somehow they dusted themselves off and put themselves in a position where one guy can make $1 million, change his life.
Yeah, George, I think you put it well, man. I think, first of all, it's rare that you see two behemoths like Maurice Green and Renan Fajeda get in there and fight. So that's pretty cool. 6'8", 6'7", like you said. And, I think both guys, not only similar in stature, but I think they've experienced similar things in that it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride for these guys. They've experienced the highs, they've experienced the lows in the PFL. And Maurice Green has the ability to really write a pretty beautiful story if he's able to get to the final. And for Renan Fajeda, I think he's been the guy that a lot of people have been very excited about. His athleticism at his size, at 6'8", is just, you don't see it every day. I mean, the dude's doing backflips off of one leg. It's insane, his level of athleticism, the physical traits that he possesses, the speed, the power. It's unreal. So as far as danger, he's one of the most dangerous, one of the most potent strikers offensively in the world. Maurice Green has been training a lot with John Jones, as he's mentioned, has kind of shored up some of the weaknesses that we've seen in his game. I think he's fighting with much more confidence. I think he did make some mental errors in his last fight. And partially, I guess, you could say it was his fault, but also his corner's fault, perhaps. I don't want to be too harsh on anybody because different fighters get motivated by different things. Sometimes they need positivity to drive them forward, and some fighters just want you to be very real with them. And I think that perhaps it was a disservice to him to tell him that he was winning that round. Maybe he would have approached it differently. I don't know if he's gone back and watched that and see if that was actually the case or not, if he still believes he won that fight. But Maurice Green is absolutely capable as a fighter of winning that last fight against Ante Dili, who's a tremendous fighter, and maybe even winning it all. I definitely think he's got the skills and he's got the mindset. He's got the work ethic. So I think this is a really intriguing fight for those reasons.
Kenny, we just recently spoke to Maurice Green, and he did bring up John Jones and the effect that John Jones has had on his career, training, mentally, a lot of good advice. Can you maybe share with us somebody in your career that you came across maybe a little later in your career that kind of maybe shook your world up a little bit, a fighter, whether it was advice or training?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, man. I think every single person has played a part some more than others. I think the one guy that really was a tremendous example of work ethic and always pushing and pushing and pushing was someone like George St. Pierre. I was lucky enough to hang out with him a lot. After my fight against BJ Penn, I was able to stay with him, do his routine, see how he trains, talk to him about training. And and he brought me along to a lot of training sessions, whether it was like private lessons with John Danaher or, going to his gymnastics, room or whatever. So I was just very lucky to see him always look for doing things differently. And that was definitely an eye opener for me. His volume of training, I'm not sure I could ever match. I always prided myself on doing more than everybody. George St. Pierre, I'm not sure I ever did more than his ability to handle training was just insane, man. An absolute workhorse. I think he was one of those guys that really inspired me in a lot of different ways. And I'm so thankful that, I had a friendship with him and got a chance to train alongside him.
This year the PFL has given us a lot of surprises, and there's a lot of returning athletes that seem like they've adjusted things in their games to make them better. PFL takes time to get used to. Is there one that stands out for you, somebody that's made a really big improvement from last year to this year?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I guess it's cheating a little bit because we've done one out of the three playoffs so far. But for me, Josh Silveira, I look at how he was last year, not only like skill wise, but mentally. He's just like a different guy. Like the things that he was saying, he was brutally honest about his performance, about his dedication last year. And it's not like he wasn't necessarily dedicated or he wasn't so focused, but this year it's just totally different. I think we learned from our mistakes the most, right? For better or worse. And it seems like he's just very, very mature and very aware of himself and his performances and what he needs to do to improve. And anytime I hear that and see that in a fighter, I know that they're destined for greatness in some way, shape, or form at some point. And Josh just seems like he has that. Seeing where he was last year, he's different in every way. Definitely more mature, more skilled. He's fighting with way more confidence. He's more sure of himself. And because of that, he's in the final against a very dangerous guy in Impa Kaseganon.
I want to forecast a little bit into the future. Look, Amanda Serrano, Clarissa Shields, Jake Paul, Francis Ngannou, rumors of Bellator, right? Like, what do you think we're going to see here out of the PFL in the next couple of years? What do you think that could maybe look like?
That's hilarious, man. Leave it to Goes to come up with that one.
I got that one from Mike Bond.
Well done. Well played, Mike. So I'm not exactly sure. Like, I don't have a ton of information on what's going on. I know they've been in discussions. There might be an announcement soon, I hear too. So if that's the case, man, I think there's a ton of potential for PFL to just elevate several levels from here. I mean, absorbing that kind of a roster and getting again, I don't know what they're going to do, but if they're getting the best guys from Bellator and absorbing those guys into the PFL, it's going to be huge. It's going to be huge for the sport. I think immediately you're talking about increasing your roster by almost like 3 times potentially, putting on better fights, having higher levels of competition, which is only going to elevate the fighters in those respective divisions. So, and I think it gives an opportunity for PFL or Bellator, however they're going to split it up or combine it, to elevate their status, to really make it kind of a 2-horse race. Well, of course, there's one FC in there, but when you're talking about, competitiveness and putting on great pay-per-view fights, the PFL could do that now by getting all those guys. And also, making it that much more attractive for other fighters to come over if they're nearing the end of their contract. So I think there's a lot of different ways that they can approach this. And for me, as just a commentator, it's exciting with the prospect of calling a lot of big fights in the future.
Yeah, Don Davis has been teasing a lot, so we'll see what happens here in the next few weeks. With PFL 8, the co-main event is a dandy as well. Alina Kolsnik has lost twice to Larissa Pacheco, but
Yes.
I feel like she's also improved her game in the last 18 months or so. She's won 4 of her last 5, the only loss being to Pacheco. And like we were telling her the other day, because we spoke to her too, that footwork is really nice that she has. I mean, she really does float and when she's out there, so she's not a stationary target. Now that said, Larissa Pacheco's underrated. She is awesome. She's got a lot of skins on her wall that a lot of people don't know about unless you do a deep dive. A lot of former champions from other promotions, and of course, the crowning jewel being Kayla Harrison. Can you talk about this matchup between these ladies? I think it's going to be really, really, closer than maybe the feeling that one would get if they're just tuning in for the first time because one's beating the other one twice.
George, spot on with your analysis as usual. I think that it's a very interesting fight just based on the fact that Kolesnik is a very different fighter. And, similar to how we were talking about Josh Silveira, I think that she has really matured as a fighter and as a professional, with the different skills that she's addressed. She's had her weaknesses as far as her ground game. And while it may not be perfect, it is vastly improved from last year. I think her footwork is vastly improved from last year. Her ability to get in and get out is going to be crucial in her fight against Larissa Pacheco. So those things that she's improving, she's going to need that against Pacheco. No question about it. However, I think I would not be completely honest if I didn't say Pacheco had a huge advantage heading into that fight, just based on what she has accomplished. And of course, to what you alluded to, she's defeated, people like Kayla Harrison, Julia Butt, she is unbelievable, man. And I've been saying this for a while. Amanda Nunes in her prime, or even the last Amanda Nunes, who I thought looked fantastic. I think Larissa Pacheco, the way she matches up with her, she's one of the few women in the world that I think could actually give her a run for her money, that could actually dethrone her. So I truly believe that in my heart of hearts. And I remember last year telling everybody, do not sleep on Pacheco against Kayla Harrison. Kayla is phenomenal. She's great. I know she had a lot of injuries last year, but Pacheco is so damn dangerous. Her power, her speed, her grappling, her ability to get up from tough positions, the belief in herself, her physicality. She just looks totally different. And I think she's on her way to becoming a potential 2-division champion in the PFL, which has never been done before. So she really is that good. Kolesnik has improved a great deal. I think confidence-wise, she's riding high, so she's going to need all of that confidence to defeat Pacheco. I think because of that, it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, and just to finish the praises on Pacheco, so you're right. It would be 2 divisions having titles, and as a bantamweight, she held her own. She's got wins over Irene Aldana, Sarah Kaufman. Kaufman's a former Strikeforce world champ. Aldana, of course, the UFC title contender. So we're literally talking about someone that just gets overlooked when you talk about all-time greats in women's MMA. And yes, I also believe it would have been an interesting fight because when you fight Nunes, the first thing you got to do is get your respect. And yep. Pacheco's got that type of power. I would have loved to see those two dance at one point. All right, Goes has one more. We got Kenny Florian here. He's calling the fights for PFL 8, PFL 9. It's a Friday and a Wednesday. So 5 days. You'll get 2 sets of fights on ESPN, folks. And again, these are big fights. These are semifinals that lead to the finals later on this year. $1 million to the winner. Goes wrap up with Kenny Florian.
On this same topic, George was talking about how cool it would have been had this been the final, right? These 2 girls.
Yeah.
And then as we got to talking with Elena a little bit, we all kind of figured out, well, because it's happening here, we're getting it 3 rounds versus 5. How much of a difference do you think that makes strategy-wise, fight-wise, when you see it play out in your head, Kenny? Does this favor more, towards Elena or Larissa? How do you see that playing out, the fact that it's 3 versus 5?
I think it's a great question, and I'm not sure I have a great answer. I think that both ladies, candidly have struggled a little bit in making 145 pounds. Now, Larissa has made it every time, but I think her first fight against Bud, we didn't see Pacheco at her best. She said, the weight cut was absolutely horrendous. The second one, she said, was significantly better, and she believes it's going to be way better this time out. So I don't think it's going to be an issue, and I don't think it's going to be an issue. I think for Kolesnik, knowing how big of a fight this is for her, she understands she needs to make weight. She has missed before as well. So I don't think it's going to be an issue here, but if one of them does struggle, I think the fact that it's 3 rounds is way better than it being 5 rounds. So I think it kind of favors both in a way. I think Pacheco has a tendency of being a fast starter. I don't think she's necessarily I don't think she slows down at the end, but one thing's for sure, we have seen her start very fast. Kolesnik, sometimes we see her start slow. So I don't know. I think it kind of benefits both here in this matchup that it's 15 minutes. So, yeah, that's how I see it.
Good stuff, Ken Flo. Listen, we still have about 2 weeks before the other one. We already took 20 minutes of your time. I don't want to drag it out too long. I'd love to come back and revisit, do a quick preview of PFL 9 in about a week or so. Thank you so much for your time today. Both cards are really, really nice. Man, I can't wait for Burgos and Collard. That's going to be a great one. And I'm a huge fan of Magomed Karamov. That guy, when he's on, oh, man, he looks like he's one of the best at 170. And, of course, I see a lot of Savadou C here in Las Vegas. I mean, that guy, he's a giant, for one, and he's so slick, when he gets going.
He would probably be my second choice as guys who have made the most amount of improvements. And I felt weird saying that considering he won the championship last year, but he's actually even better this year. So, yeah, man, always great to talk to you guys, and I'd love to come back.
All right. Thank you, Ken. Folks, tune in on Friday, the 18th on ESPN. Check it out. Big fights, courtesy of the PFL. We'll talk to you soon.